With so many pre-made adventures that you can find in the market today, is it worth our time to make our own world, make our own adventures? Surely there must be something out there that fits what we want to do with our world. The answer is a little bit complicated, and we're going to be talking about that today. How valuable is it for us to create our own world? And I'm going to basically split this in the good and the bad of having your own world. I don't have like a definitive opinion, like a final thing. The more I thought about this, ended up being more like a matter of personal taste on what you want to do, how you want to invest your time. Let's talk about the good stuff. The first item is that you get to write your own background, which in itself is what we're talking about, but hear me out. What I mean is that you actually get to have precisely what you want because you're creating this custom made for your ideas. The fit is excellent. Like everything goes the way it should go, and all the writing you need to do, it's focused on your goals with this world, with this adventure. There's a value in being able to customize everything just the way you want it. Related to this is the fact that then you get to create your own maps. And going from the worldwide perspective of creating a map, then you can create your own unique features of the world. If you want like a strange terrain, you want something that seems unnatural and magical in nature, or you want to provide certain types of combinations of terrains, you are totally free to do it. If we go down into the scale to cities, then you can create your own cities the way you want them to. Maybe you want cities to have unique features. Maybe you want a city, for example, that has a river crossing right through it, through the middle of it. And you can have a whole island that is a city. Things like that will make your world unique, and it will be again tailored to what you want to present in your world for your players. Going even deeper, now we're talking about adventure maps. This lets you tweak and tune what you're going to present perfectly for your players. Of course, this requires that there's been some prior communication to what your players are expecting from the game. But in general terms, you can design maps that work with your players, with their style, or with the concept of the adventure that you want to run. It makes it easier for you to link an adventure map to a city or another type of settlement, to the island or continent, wherever that exists, and make it very cohesive, make it all fit very nicely together. From the macro to the micro, you can always have everything fit together like a neat puzzle. Then related to the adventures is that then it's easier for you, since it's your own creation, to modify and change things up as the adventure progresses, as the campaign progresses. If you get to play a few sessions, then you can start tweaking things. Then you can start getting ideas from the players. You can start getting ideas from the events, the results of certain adventures. And then you can easily change your world in a way that makes sense. And for the players, it's going to be invisible. It's going to make sense. But you have been taking all this information and modifying and tweaking and refining. And maybe you had an idea that this place had certain value, certain information, and now it turns out that no, because the way the adventure has developed, it would be better off to make this other place more important. And then you go in there and detail it. Another good point about creating your things is that there's no risk of spoilers. Your players only know what you have provided to them. There's no source book they can look at. There's no module they can buy and look at things and read up in advance. It's your world. It resides in your head and in your documents. And therefore, they cannot spy on it and figure out things in advance. And that's a huge advantage. If you really, especially if you want to present something that has like a twist or something unexpected in the adventure, this is perfect for that. When you have homebrew stuff, you have full control of the flow of information, and you have to use this to your advantage. Of course, that means that sometimes you have to prepare and provide a lot of information so that the players get a good idea of the world and the things and the events that are transpiring. For them, especially if they're going to unknown places, it's really going to feel like an adventure. It's totally unknown because it only exists in that table, in that game. And then the final point that I can think of right off the bat about creating your own stuff is the pure satisfaction of creating your own world, of naming things, naming countries, creating cultures, creating, tweaking the existing races of that setting, of that game system to fit what you have in mind, creating these new societies. All these things bring an immense satisfaction as a game master. It really makes you one with your world. It makes you one with your game. And the level of satisfaction you get when you see your players truly enjoy something that you have created from scratch, that came from your mind, it's really mind-blowing and it's unforgettable. That's a big point in favor of creating your own world. Now let's talk about the not so good stuff. I'm going to start with writing. You have to write a lot. And I'm not talking about necessarily paragraphs and paragraphs of backstory and lore and legends and myths and all that. Because even if you go into the lazy dungeon master style, you're still going to write a lot. I'll give you an example of my current game. My players are looking for this book that has some key information that they need. The book tells a story. Well, then I start writing the sketch, so to speak, for the book. And start writing all the background, the story, more or less what's going to be talking about. And then I start writing about this person, particular person. Oh, now I gotta write a little bit about that person. You know, a few points, key points, because you don't want to be lost. And you write those key points and you go back. And then you keep writing, and then you find, oh, this city or this place. Oh, wait, I need to write stuff about that city. Okay, let me write that in. You write that, and you go back, and you keep going back and forth. Before you know it, you have written a lot of stuff. And writing takes time. Be prepared that if you're going to be creating your own stuff, you're going to be writing a lot. And for some of us that are rather busy, it might be hard to carve out that time to sit down and write stuff. Again, even if you go light with the writing, you're going to do a lot of writing. Another thing that you have to keep in mind when creating your own world, your own adventures, is to keep track of all the loose ends. And of course, this applies to any adventure, but when it's your stuff, when it's your world, it gets even harder. Then you have world events, not only adventure elements, things that happen globally in that continent and how things link with each other. You have to keep that in mind and keep track of everything. Make notes and make sure you don't miss anything. It can get pretty daunting sometimes. And again, taking notes constantly. We go back to the first point. You have to write a lot and keep things organized. If the players start seeing consistencies in your world and in the world events, it might detract a bit from the enjoyment from the adventure. So keep that in mind. Your world, you have the full responsibility. You are that world's main god. Make sure everything works. Another point, which is what I mentioned before as a good thing, can also be a bad thing, is you have to create all the cities, towns, and maps. Again, this takes time. There's very useful tools. For example, for world maps, there are tools like Incarnate. I'm going to put a link to Incarnate in the comments that can help you create your maps, draw really good looking maps. But still, you have to draw them. You have to imagine them. You have to think of all the features of that world. Rivers, mountains, forests, swamps, plains, tundras, ice, everything. And then you have to place the cities. What about the realm of the elves if your system has something like that? What about the dwarves, halflings, orcs, goblins? All these people are living. Does it make sense? Or does it look like somebody just sprinkled a bunch of different locations and things on a map? Let me tell you, you're going to get a lot of good results if you keep this in mind when you're designing your own world. You make everything is coherent, makes sense, and it's logical within the context of a fantasy world. There are plenty of good maps. I mean, there's map generators, there's city generators you can find on the internet. I'm going to put a bunch of links down below. There's, for the adventures, there's also online maps. There's people like Dyson Logos, which I use constantly because his maps are fantastic. You can get maps from Dyson Logos. They're free. You can use them. You can tweak them, make them your own. But still, you have to go through the online stuff, look at what's out there, see if it fits, and if it fits, then create the legend for that map. So again, a lot of work involved. Satisfaction is high, but also is the work. And that brings us also to the part of the adventures. You have to create the adventures and make sure your players have fun with them. And this is, it's not terribly difficult, but it can be challenging. It helps to know your players and see what they like and see what could be challenging. And there's a bunch of information on the web about how to design an adventure that is challenging and actually your players can enjoy. That's a little bit beyond the scope of this video, but you still have to write your own adventure. So you take those maps even from the internet and then you have to write stuff about them. You have to fill them in. Monsters, traps, treasure, events, things, all that. You have to create a storyline if you're going to have such a thing. And what's going to happen, and all the bifurcations are like, if this happens, then do this, else do that, and all that. You have to go through that process. You have to make diagrams, simple diagrams that help you figure this out. Again, a lot of work. Be prepared. And finally, and this might be one of the most difficult things when designing your own world, is to avoid falling in love with the stuff you create. You gotta like it, but you can't fall in love with it and be in denial, especially when you notice that your players are not enjoying the adventure or the game or the world. And you're gonna find it really hard, since you have invested so much time developing it, you're gonna find it really hard to basically just scrap parts of it. So you have to be aware that there may be things that you might just have to throw away, even if you spend a couple hours on them. Whether a map, whether a story arc, an adventure, whatever, it doesn't matter, an NPC. You can't be enamored of your stuff. You have to be cold about it, and if something doesn't work, throw it away or shelve it, and maybe you can use it in another adventure, and maybe that time it'll work. It's something that can kind of like hit our pride as writers and creators. We cannot go into an aggressive mode, so to speak, where we force the game onto our players. If it's not flowing, it's not flowing. Scrap it, move on. So hopefully this information helped you evaluate if it's worth it to build your own world or not. And I would like to know what's your personal experience with creating a world. Let me know in the comments. And as always, if you like this video, hit the like button. If you like the content of my channel, feel free to subscribe. It's free and hopefully you will enjoy it. And until next time, keep those D20s rolling.